So, hello everyone. In this video, we will do the daily current affairs analysis of 15th November 2021. So, the first topic which we will discuss is lack of manpower in probe agencies. So, it is from GS paper 2 and topic is separation of powers between various organs, dispute redressal mechanism and institutions. So, why it is in the news? It was decided recently through an ordinance passed by the central government that the chiefs of CBI and ED, that is the Central Bureau of Investigation, and the Enforcement Directorate can now be appointed for 5 years. So until recently there has been a long term issue of pending vacancies in probe agencies such as the Central Bureau of Investigation CBI and also the ED Enforcement Directorate. So like judiciary, even probe agencies suffered from the dearth of manpower and infrastructure, so they are overburdened. For example, one trial court handles 1000 cases. So some of these cases investigated by agencies such as the CBI and the Enforcement Directorate ED have been pending for over a decade. So data on pending cases against the legislatures, if we particularly talk about, so the 51 MPs and 171 MLAs were accused of offences under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act PMLA 2002. So out of the 121 cases pending trial against MPs and MLAs before the CBI courts across the country, 58 were punishable with life imprisonment. In 45 cases, even the charges have not been framed, though the offences were alleged to have been committed several years ago. A total of 37 CBI cases against legislatures were continuing in the stage of investigation for years on and now. Challenges and causes for frequent delays. The High Courts intervened and granted stay of the trial. ED cases were held up because they spanned to tax havens abroad, which refused to cooperate with investigations. Insufficient special courts to exclusively try cases against the MPs and MLAs. Shortage of prosecutors and latches in prosecution. Delayed investigation. So the prelim throttling topics are powers and functions of ED and also the powers and functions of CBI. So source of this news is The Hindu. Next is about the COP26. So it is from GS paper 3 and topic is conservation related issues. So why it is in the news? The COP26 is expected to enhance its focus on reducing the carbon emissions sharply till 2030 rather than focusing on the net zero targets till 2050 because it is a very distant reality. So about the COP26, so it has commenced in Glasgow from 31st October 2021. Many preparatory meetings and high level bilateral talks have taken place before the COP26 meeting to persuade countries for further enhancing their emission reduction targets under the Paris Agreement so that the carbon emissions can sharply be reduced by 2030. Some countries have responded positively, yet some other very high contributing countries are not so keen to raise their targets and are very short of their current targets as well. So alternative approach to a net zero target, the recently released IPCC report titled AR6 report highlights that it is much more important to reduce the global emissions by 45% by 2030 as compared to 2010 levels to keep the rise in temperature below the target of 1.5 degrees Celsius than to focus too much on net zero emission target by 2050. So issues associated with the net zero target. Net zero approach doesn't pay enough and required attention on the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities put forth by the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change UNFCCC. According to CBDR, as the developed countries are responsible for over 75% of the global greenhouse gas burden, so they must bear the majority of the burden of reducing the emissions, while the developing countries should receive technological and financial aid from the developed countries. So, hence, all the countries, either developed or developing, cannot be expected to reach a level of net zero together by 2050, on which the principle of net zero focuses on the most. That is why what is more important is to focus on reducing the greenhouse gas emissions by 45% till 2030 as compared to the 2010 levels, as backed by the IPCC report, to keep a check on the rise of global temperatures. So, issues associated, according to the UN NDC report, even if all the updated NDC targets under the Paris Agreement are taken into account, the decrease in greenhouse gas levels till 2030 is expected to be only 16.3% as compared to the 2010 levels, while the IPCC report has advocated for at least a 45% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions till 2030 as compared to 2010 levels, to keep the rise in global temperatures below 1.5 degree Celsius. That is why there's a need to focus extensively on reducing the greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 by 45%, rather than focusing too much on the net zero target till 2050. So, way forward, COP26 must extensively focus on reducing the greenhouse gas emissions by 45% till 2030 as compared to 2010 levels, rather than focusing too much on achieving net zero targets till 2050. India should subsequently raise its INDC targets under the Paris Agreement to also include the target of reduction in emission intensity, which is ratio of emission to GDP, by around 35% to 40% till 2030 as compared to 2005 levels. India can achieve this target quite easily, as India has been enhancing its reduction target by around 2% per annum as per the current INDC targets. Additionally, India can also commit to achieve the net zero target by 2075. Subsequently, if India enhances its tree and forest cover substantially over the next few years, and also progressively expands its renewable energy and electric vehicle ecosystem, thereby reducing its dependence on thermal power plants and fossil fuels, then India can also achieve the target of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. So, source of this news is this article in published in Times of India. So, next is the appointment of speaker and deputy speaker. So, it is from GS paper 2, and topic is Union Parliament. So, how are speakers and deputy speakers selected? So, Article 93 of the Lok Sabha and Article 178 of the Indian Constitution, in case of the state assemblies, states that these houses will elect their two members to be the speaker and the deputy speaker respectively. So, in the Lok Sabha and in the legislatures, the president or the governor sets the date for the election of the speaker, and the speaker decides the date of the election of the deputy speaker. So this particular thing is very important from the prelims point of view. This thing can be a potential statement in one of the questions in prelims. So that's why you have to remember the minute details, particularly about the appointment, removal and duration of the constitutional posts which are mentioned in the constitution. For example, the PM, president, vice president, governor, speaker, deputy speaker, chief justice of India, chief justice of the high courts, and other judges of the supreme courts and high courts, how they are appointed, how they are removed, how they can be impeached, and other constitutional the bodies and also the posts like the CAG, like the head of the finance commission, etc. So you have to remember all these, okay? So is it mandatory under the constitution to have a deputy speaker? So constitutional experts put out that both articles 93 and 178 use the words shall and as soon as be, indicating that the election of the speaker and deputy speaker is not only compulsory but urgent. So their roles and responsibilities: the speaker is the chief spokesperson of the house, representing its united voice and its only representative outside the house. The speaker presides over the proceedings of the house and the joint sitting of the two houses of parliament. It is the speaker's decision that decides whether the bill is a finance or a money bill or not. Usually the speaker comes from the ruling party. In the case of Lok Sabha deputy speaker or the state legislative assembly deputy speaker, this position has been different over the years. The constitution has sought to ensure the independence of the speaker by charging his salary on the India's consolidated fund, and the same is not voted on by the parliament. During a general debate on the bill, members of parliament should refer only to the speaker while speaking. So duration: once elected, the deputy speaker usually holds office until the end of the house's duration. So under Article 94, Section 179 of the legislature, the speaker or the deputy speaker shall resign if he or she ceases to be a member of the House of Representatives. They may resign to each other or may be removed from office by a resolution of the House of Representatives passed by a majority of all members of the House at the time. So powers of deputy speaker: the deputy speaker has the same powers as the speaker when presiding over the sitting of the house. All references to the speaker in the rules are regarded as indications by the deputy speaker in charge. So states that have set a deadline to hold elections. The constitution does not set a time limit and does not specify the procedure for this election. Any such a statement is very important. So this is also a very important statement, particularly for the prelims. So it is up to the legislature to decide how the election will be conducted. For example, Haryana and Uttar Pradesh specify the length of the time. In Haryana, the election of the speaker must take place as soon as possible after the election. A deputy speaker will be elected within 7 days. The rules also stipulate that if a vacancy at these offices occur after that, elections must be held within 7 days of the next session of the legislature. In the Uttar Pradesh, there is a 15-day deadline for the election of the speaker. In the case of the deputy speaker, the date of the first election must be determined by the speaker with 30 days to fill the remaining vacancies. So the prelims hot link topics are election of a speaker and deputy speaker, responsibilities and power of the speaker and deputy speaker, removal, reasons for removal, related committees. So source of this news is the Indian Express. Next is about the Nebra sky disk. So it is a prelims specific topic. So, the British Museum in London had recently decided to exhibit an ancient artifact called the Nebra sky disk, which is considered to be the world's oldest concrete exhibition. About 3600 years ago, this disk was traditionally buried with two swords, axes, two horizontal arm rings, and a single copper plate near Nebra in Germany. The burial of these objects is thought to have taken place as a dedication to the gods. Okay, so source of this news is Science Reporter magazine. Next is the hot springs. So it is a prelims specific topic. So the hot springs point in Ladakh is one of the 4 points where Indian and Chinese troops retreated face to face during the May 2020 resistance. Hot springs, traditionally known as Kiam, is a camping site and a test site for the Indian border. Patrol Point 15 on the Chanmo River in Ladakh near the border with China. So the area got its name from the hot springs in the area. It lies in the southeast of the Galwan Valley. So this can be a potential question directly in the prelims, that the hot springs located in the Ladakh region, or seen recently in the news, is exactly located in which of the following regions. So the options can be the west of the Nebra river, or the south region of the Ladakh region, or the southeast of the Galwan Valley, and the fourth option can be north south of the Pangong So Lake. So the answer in that case would be southeast of the Galwan Valley. So that is why you have to remember these minute details, because you never know that which detail that you had studied any time in the past would come in handy while solving a question directly in the prelims, or to eliminate some of the statements, which will further help you to do the intelligent guessing. Because to know answers to around 50 questions, considering the dicey and the unpredictable level of the questions which the UPSC is framing, particularly in the prelims, so that thing is very very difficult. A well read and a well prepared candidate would know around 35 to 40 or max 45 questions, but to clear the cutoff you have to correctly mark at least 55 to 60 questions at least, keeping in mind the negatives that would also be there. So that is why you have to do the intelligent guessing, and you have to take chances. So to take chances, it is very important that you analyze the current affairs very closely and very sharply, and keep in mind these minute details, because they can come in handy anytime in the exam, in the first question also, or in while solving the 100th question also. So that is why you have to keep a close check on such minute statements which are there in the current affairs. So it is close, this hot springs is close to the Konkala, the world that shows the line of actual control. The passage also marks the border between China's two most critical provinces, Xinjiang in the north and Tibet in the south. Konkala lies west of China's G219 highway connecting Xinjiang with Tibet. So source of for this news is The Hindu. So thanks a lot for watching the analysis video. Have a nice day.